Hey everybody, happy Monday and welcome to another edition of Weeds Weekly, where we dive into what happened this past week as it pertains to mortgage rates, interest rates in the real estate market, right? And the theory there is let's do that again. We're going to talk about the upcoming week. What do we have on the table? And again, as we've talked about before, we do not want to fall asleep at the wheel. So we are going to make sure that we are on top of it 100%. Because we've done that in the past. We're 6 months in, we want to be prepared. We're going to talk about what 53.7% means with regards to the Fed and decreasing the Fed funds rate. And then we're going to lastly talk about proper expectations, a lot of what my thoughts are in that theory. So let's just dive right in. So what happened last week, as I said already, is let's do that again. While it was a roller coaster, and I personally love roller coasters, the big thing of last week is all data was pointing towards the fact that inflation is getting under control, the labor market was pulling back a little bit, all indications, even consumer sentiment, all indications were what the Fed needed to see to try to plot out exactly when they're going to be able to decrease the Fed funds rate. Now, make no mistake about it. Is anything moving with great urgency? Absolutely not. Inflation is very stubborn. We're talking 3.2%. It is still much higher than the Fed's anticipated 2% read that they want. However, the trend seems to be moving in the right direction. But last week, we also had a Fed funds meeting, and the Fed made every attempt to derail exactly what the Treasury market was trying to do. And what the traders were feeling good about is that the Fed now, with all these signals, may have the ability to cut rates sooner rather than later. But the Fed, in its infinite wisdom, decided to come out, and I appreciate their honesty. I really do. But the fact that they had a different theory months ago, and now they're coming once the tide is turning, it just clearly is an indication to me that the Fed is always a day late and a dollar short. Up until this past week, their mantra was that we are going to get 3 rate cuts this year. At this meeting, they indicated 1. The dot plot came out, and it's clearly indicating that all expectations, a majority, 85-90% of all Fed members believe that we are only going to get 1 rate cut for the remainder of 2024. And what it looks like going into 2025, we're only going to see the Fed funds rate cut down about a percentage from where it is today. So it's not going to be major moves, but always remember that the market is forward thinking. So that's why you saw traders get a little excited. But they got excited towards the beginning of the week because of CPI. The inflation number was down. The Fed attempted to derail it. We erased all those gains that we saw in the Treasury market. And then after PPI came out later in the week on Thursday, coupled with initial jobless claims coming in higher than anticipated, traders said, you know what, we're good. You only got 1 rate cut. We think there might be 2, and therefore they pushed ahead. And we saw 10-year treasuries close right around just above 4.2%, and we have not been at that level since March of this year. So all indications are things are moving in the right directions, high fives all around. And as a result, whether it was jumbo or conforming interest rates, we were able to get below, depending on your credit score, 7% for loan sizes from 300,000 all the way down to 2 million. So that was a great thing. So coming up this week, as we said, we're not going to fall asleep at the wheel anymore. We have taken these couple weeks off typically, right? Where the first couple weeks with non-farm payrolls and all the inflation data, we tend to sit back and say, let's breathe a little bit, right? We have time to take a pause. Let's digest what's going on. No more. It's foot on the gas for us, and we're going to analyze what is coming up every week. So what we have this week is a few things that I think are big to note. Is number 1, we got housing starts, and we got existing pending sales. And I think it's going to give a clear indication to the Fed, and why I think it's important is last month we saw a 7.7% decrease. How sluggish are we, right? We know that the real estate market is struggling, and that's okay. We know where we are. We see inventories picking up. We still see a lack of supply, however, which is quite interesting. Prices seem to be stable, although in some areas, right, we remember it's hyper local. But the big thing I think for the Fed standpoint is how crushing are their policies on the housing market, and what is their projection for when that's going to recover? I think that's also going to play into when they want to do this the first Fed funds rate cut. So I think that's important. The other thing we have that's coming up this week is we have a lot of, We got the consumer data coming out once again. We got retail sales. And I think, again, as we've seen over the last 3 to 4 months, the consumer's pulling back. Inflation is crushing them. Middle America is, you go to the grocery store, I say it once, I say it again. I mean, it is crippling at times when you go in there. So we have those numbers coming out, and I think it's going to reflect much more of the same thing. But we need to remember, right, consumer spending, retail sales and all that, it accounts for 2/3 of our GDP. And as we're seeing, GDP is starting to pull back as well. And again, we don't want to fall asleep at the wheel. So all these data points, whether big or small, continue to kind of snowball and add up and give the Fed ammunition to make that move sooner rather than later. And lastly, we're going to get a lot of manufacturing data. We got a lot of surveys. You got, what do we got coming out this week? We got manufacturing PMI, services PMI, Philly Fed Manufacturing Index. It's going to give us a good indication of, what purchasing managers are seeing out there, where they believe the forecast is going for manufacturing, which really correlates to where the consumer's head is at. So it's going to be quite interesting. It's not a big week with regards to, anything that could be really a big market mover. But I think if we continue to get the same trend, I think that's going to be a positive. However, I do see, like every other week that we've stepped into, traders are going to be cautious. I expect rates to actually increase a little bit from where they settled last week. I wouldn't be surprised if we get up to 4.35%. That'd be a whole full point move depending on the data that comes out. And lastly, the big thing we have is just, we have a lot of Fed members speaking this week, right? And words matter. We've learned that now. So based on last week's meeting, depending on if they've changed their tune, because that PPI number was released on Thursday after the Fed met, it's going to be quite interesting to see what they all have to say. Right? Are they all now saying, well, yeah, it's great to see all, inflation continuing to come down? I think they're still going to have the posture that they need to have rates remain higher for longer to ensure that we're moving in this trend. But again, words are going to matter this week. So let's touch on what my thoughts are on 53.7%. So once the Fed spoke on Wednesday, prior to that, it was like a 56% chance that the Fed would decrease the Fed funds rate in September, right? And that means that July is off the table. I think it's like 10%, and it is off the table. The Fed's not going to do anything at that meeting. So let's just get that over with. But we were sitting at about 53. Once the Fed spoke on Wednesday and said there's only one more rate cut, that went below 50%. And then with the PPI number, it went back up to 53.7%. And I personally have it in the category in the camp of around 65 to 75%. And I'm going to tell you why. There's several factors that the Fed looks at, right, when they're really starting to consider what do we do with this Fed funds rate. And number one, we've talked about it numerous times, the Fed is, and I'm sorry to say it, political, just like every other entity of the government. Make no mistake about it, every entity of the government is political in some nature. And the amount of pressure that is going to be brought by the White House during this time, especially if we see this data creeping down, is going to be enormous. So we can't just write that off as something we don't recognize. Number two, what did I put down? The consumer has been pulling back. They've been doing it for 3 to 4 months. I think retail sales are going to reflect that this week. I think consumer sentiment continues to just be angst. And now that we're moving into a political cycle, I think that even grows. I think you're going to see the consumer pull back even more with their discretionary income. The third thing is the labor market. And while, 2 weeks ago, we had the non-farm payroll week and a half ago explode and smash the number by 92,000, what I'm seeing is week after week now, and we've seen it for about 3 weeks, that the initial jobless claims is coming in higher than forecast. Now, it's only by 20K, but it's the lag effect, right? And when does the labor market really start to indicate, hey, we're struggling? And I think you're going to see that not come July. I think that's going to start be reflective in August. I think the initial jobless claims number is going to keep going up. I think the July non-farm payroll is going to come in right around forecast, if not slightly above or below. And then I think you're going to see a real big turn in August, which is leading me to why I'm at 65 or 75%, or one of the reasons why for a rate cut come September. Right? And then lastly, it's inflation. And while the Fed keeps talking about the mantra of 2%, 2%, 2%, look, man, they are so far off, it's crazy. We're still sitting at about 3.2 to 3.4. they have a long ass way to go. And as I've indicated before, they're going to change that number. 2% is not going to be the target. They're going to start adjusting prior to that. They're going to start adjusting. And if we can get below 3 on any read come July or August, as we move down and all these other data sets in these shorter weeks or these smaller weeks of data indicate that we're moving in that direction, it's just going to be further ammunition. And what I'm starting to see is that all indications, while slight and while minimal, are all starting to move in that direction that, okay, the economy is slowing down, inflation is starting to pull back, the labor market is pulling back, the consumer has been pulling back for a while. Okay, we can do a Fed funds rate cut. So I think there's a really good chance for that, but make no mistake, July and August are really going to paint that picture. And then lastly, I like to talk about proper expectations, right? And I think we're all trying to move inventory out there, and the market right now is pretty tight. But I'm here to tell you that the mortgage professional, I go to all these open houses on the weekend, and it's pretty funny. I talk to so many real estate professionals, and in essence, what they're saying is to their clients is, hey, go get a pre-approval first. Go get a pre-approval first. But the real reason is proper expectations. I think that the message needs to be a little bit different in the fact of we need to be painting a why for our potential clients, or a better story of why working closely with the right mortgage professional is so imperative, right? For real estate agents, a mortgage professional is in your corner, right? As I've talked about several times, especially on my Thursday Instagram Live, which is called What's Brewing, a question came up like, what's the best thing that you think people can do? And I said, number one, people should be talking to a mortgage professional before they talk to the real estate professional all day. And the reason being is going to look at real estate is sexy, especially if you're going into new construction, or especially just the feeling, the vibe, right? And we're going to move into something great. We're now going to have 4 bedrooms, not 3. Sophia and Leia are not going to have to share a room. I mean, it is awesome. It's such a wonderful feeling. You can get engulfed emotionally with that, right? And it's sexy. It's just sexy. Where the rubber meets the road is the mortgage side. And while working really closely and getting us mortgage professionals in front of your clients sooner is going to help the process, because it's going to paint that real picture. You're no longer going to be showing houses that you shouldn't be showing your clients that they can't afford. We're going to be able to do the tough talk of, hey, you want to stay within a certain budget, and then we're going to be able to provide that to you and work that backwards, right? So I think the big thing that we can start doing in this marketplace especially is setting those proper expectations. Is your expectation that the house is going to appreciate? Great, then let's bury down into a zip code where I think it's going to appreciate. Should be what the real estate professional is saying, right? And I think by working together more closely as a team, because typically where we come into the picture is when somebody's already looking. Somebody's already found a house. And at that point, trying to adjust credit scores, trying to get them to be very realistic with their numbers, or, to not be a surprise of, whoa, I didn't realize that payment was going to be that high, or I didn't realize that taxes were so much, and I didn't realize that my overall payment was going to be $4,000. I thought it was going to be around $3,000. It's a waste of time, right? And you're giving a false narrative. We're giving a false narrative collectively to those clients that, hey, go look at the dream, go get excited about something that you can't attain. So I just think setting the proper expectations for a lot of clients today will really help real estate agents in honing in on needs and wants, really understanding where it is they can afford, and then showing them the proper homes, walking them down the steps of, I'm your affordability consultant. I'm here to look at the big picture. I'm not here to just sell you a house. I'm here in conjunction with the mortgage professional, making sure that from a budget side, everything looks good, so then I can go find you your dream home. So that was the big message, I think, is get us involved a lot sooner than you think, and just anyone that you're talking to. Hey, by the way, here's 3 mortgage professionals that I think you should engage right now, so then when you're ready, we know exactly what it is to go look for. And last, I even give this approach. I was talking to a real estate agent over the weekend at an open house, and I said to her, if you don't want to introduce us to your clients, that's no problem. But instead of just saying, hey, I'd love to show you houses, but you need to go get pre-approved, another thing you could say is, well, I would love to show you houses, but what do you anticipate your monthly payment to be? If you're able to get that out of your client, I'm more than happy to run numbers and tell you exactly where they would fall. For that mortgage payment, they're going to be able to afford an $800,000 purchase with a 20% down payment. At least at that point, you can then build, right? On your back end in the MLS, you can build a search and say, hey, I went in and based on what you told me with regards to a potential mortgage payment, I just went in and made some assumptions on my end. Here are the following assumptions, and here are houses that fit well within your budget that I would love to give you a chance to see. And I think that's a great approach. So then you're not just saying, hey, go talk to your mortgage professional, because let's be honest, people get busy, right? Let's give them homework so that they go do that, or give them incentive to go do the homework and talk to their mortgage professional because they saw a house that they were like, oh shit, I need to go see this place. All right, as always, I am around for the entire week. I work all hours, so email, text, call, whatever you need, please do not hesitate to give me a call. Always love referrals as well, but I am here in your corner to help you close more business. And the best thing that I'm doing right now for all the clients that I'm working with is I'm saving them money, whether it be on closing costs, whether it be on a lower interest rate. I am saving every client I deal with money from an alternative lender. It's just how it's working right now. Being direct with a bank and being direct as a broker, I have that ability to get as skinny as I want to on any given deal. So once again, you got any questions, you let me know. Have a great week. Happy selling out there. And I will talk to you on Friday with a wrap up of the week. Cheers.